네, 여러분.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Choi-ji, the moderator, the MC for this session. Before beginning our session, let me invite Chairman Moon Dae-rim for his congratulatory speech. Please welcome Chairman Moon Dae-rim. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And I'd like to express my appreciation to all the participants for this session. And the reason why I want to express my gratitude for all of them is because I think this is the one of the most meaningful session in Jejuporam. Where this issue, this agenda, is the most pending issues in Jeju Island, and a lot of people are watching how this will be playing out. Since I was inaugurated for my position, I put this agenda as the most pending one and try to resolve these legal issues in order to re-promote this project. And in the beginning, I was quite confident that, but as time goes by, it gets more sensitive. And under the circumstances, there has been a lot of issues regarding roads and bridges and parking facilities. And we realized that we don't have much time left. So I sincerely hope that we can come up with a productive resolutions to resolve all those issues based on the social consensus in this issue. So please share your ideas and insight. And from next month, all the way down to the end of the year, based on your insights and ideas, we would like to resolve this issue so that all the Jeju people and all the stakeholders will become more productive in proceeding this project. So be free to share your ideas. Thank you. Thank you for your remarks. So let us begin the session on discussion on the win-win measures to re-promote the project of the Yerae Reacreation Housing Complex. So let me gladly introduce the moderator today, Mr. Kim Hyun-soo. Professor Kim Hyun-soo is teaching at Hanguk University now, but also he's a president of Korean Planning Association. So let us welcome Professor Kim Hyun-soo.
오늘 좌장을 맡
Hello, I am your moderator today. My name is Kim Hyun-soo. It is all the more meaningful and it's an honor for me to have a moderator position today. So I visited Jeju and I heard that foreign tourists decreased and the atmosphere has been changed in Jeju, and I can feel the vibration in Jeju Island. So today's session is very meaningful because we are trying to find the win-win solution to re-promote the project of the Yerae Recreational Housing Complex. So what kind of the relation do we have with the co-prosperity and also and all those things are getting together well. Well, in 2015, the Supreme Court disruled the expropriation decision, and there were so many changes. And what was the reason behind the invalidating ruling? And there are numerous opinions from the landowners. So to address this issue, I think we have to hear the voices of the local residents, JDC, and Jeju City government to figure out the integrated solution. So I think today's venue will provide that chance to hear all those voices. Let's hear this presentation first. The director Park Jae-mo will give a presentation. She's the director of the Jeju Free, the International City the Development Center. So let me introduce him first. We have Kang Soo-eun here. Professor Kang Soo-young was involved in the getting the licensing at the first place, so he knows all this story. And also he has been working for the civil engineering in Jeju International the University for 40 years. So please welcome him with a big round of applause. And next is Park Myo-jin, the CEO of Plus PMP. He is involving in the feasibility study. In 2003, he was involved in the 70 essential projects, and he was involved in the implementation of those projects. And the next, the panelist will be the Professor Ko Dong-wan. He is a professor of the Tourism Development Department of Gyeonggi University. He is the renowned scholar in this area. And also he's from Jeju Island actually. So he is all the more the deep heart towards this project. Next is the CEO Kang Mi-ran from the JPM. And he was also, she was also involved in getting the license. And the local development is her key interest. So one speaker and 4 panelists are here. Let's first start the presentation from the director Park Jae-mo. Hello, once again, I'm introducing myself. My name is Park Jae-mo, director from the Jeju Free International City Development Center. Today, we will talk about the Yerae Reacreation Housing Complex. A lot of things happened and time has flied. Well, we achieved half, but we have to talk about the rest of the half. So that will be the topic for today. Are we going in the right direction? What's the feasibility? And what will be the justifiable reasons? What kind of win-win measures should we take? And how can we find them? So that will be the topic today. In 2002, the comprehensive leading projects were made, and there were 7 of them. And before the implementation, actually the pre-agreement percentage was more than 60% in 2005. Like that, all those local residents were actually hailing the projects, and the project started to be implemented. A lot of investors were actually knocking the doors to invest in this project. And the Bajaya, the resort, was going to be established here, and the Bajaya Group is invested in this project. And the establishment plan was actually authorized. But in 2015, there was the trial regarding the appropriation, but the Supreme Court made a ruling, and then, well, it was suspended after the ruling, and the completion ratio was about 65%. And then the BJR started to file the lawsuits for compensation. And if the ruling was well settled down, then it would be really nice. But in 2019, all of those licenses were ruled out by the Supreme Court. The foreign investors we're having a lot of disputes with our parties, and then later all those settlements were done. So the 4.7 trillion won worth of international lawsuit was done, and only the original amount of investment was returned, and that was about 125 billion Korean won, and that was the end of all those settlement. So we tried to figure out how to pursue this project, and we are trying to conduct the feasibility study. In the latter half of this year, we will see the result of this feasibility study. So we needed the preliminary, the feasibility study to be passed. So we will make a proposal and hand in to the Ministry of Finance. Bozaya was going to invest in about the 741,000 square meter if it was not suspended, and then the investment amount worth of the 2.5 trillion won could be injected by 2020. And the reported amount for FDI was $120,000. And the amusement park and all those the complexes were going to be established here, and they should be done in Jeju Island. The amusement park and the investors were making this the complex. You see these rows. There are a lot of rows, but they are not well designed. And 65% of completion was done, but later it stopped like this. This is the suspended the scene. So you see the frames were constructed, but later on it was all stopped. The most regrettable thing is that the 4 lanes of the streets or the ways are already made, and the parking lots and the infrastructure, all those things were established. And even though we finished the construction of this infrastructure with tremendous amount of the investment already, but we could not finish the project yet. So that is very regrettable. Well, we did not working on the construction of the invested amount of the buildings or the other facilities, but the local residents really wanted to improve their general conditions through building infrastructure first. So that is why we made this infrastructure first, and we wanted to build the rest of those facilities later. So there are several voices. We have to finish this as soon as possible, or it was the right direction, so we have to complete the constructing the infrastructure and the building the rest of them later, like that. So if it goes in the right direction, it will go in this way. So several lawsuits are underway, and the second trial is going on. And if the court rules in the favorable way, and then the profitable expenses can be taken into consideration, and already the infrastructure was done, and then it can be only returned as the profitable expenses. Then it can be settled, and taxes can be paid by the suitable or the appropriate taxpayers, no matter how long it takes. And then the actual stakeholders can get together, and then you can discuss to proceed the project later. So that's the court's kind of opinion. So whether it would be the combined the project of the private and public, or it would be only by the public, but you can decide that later. Well, there are the registration and the purchase taxes, and the court's idea takes too long for us to follow that. So we are trying to find out other solutions to complete this project. The first one is that the expropriation and reploting method. First, we can pay the compensation if you give us the land. So that would be the method of the expropriation or use of land. And the other method would be the reploting method. So if you hand in your land to us, whether it would be the 30 or the 40%, we can build the roads and other infrastructures, and then we can return your land site later. It would not be the same spot, but later, anyway, you can have the appropriate amount of your land. But each of these have the pros and cons. So most of them are using the combined method of these two. And also, for those of them who are calling for the reduction of the housing lot, and then they can take the land of use method or expropriation. So how can we meet the feasibility? So that's our idea. And there are several pros and cons, as you can see on the slide. At this moment, infrastructures have been already made, and if we can go for the first stage one, and then for the second one, we can appropriate the land and we can move on to the project. So that'll be the fastest way. And it has certain other problems to go back to the original ideas of the tourism complex and the amusement park. There's already another like a huge the tourism complex near the Jungmun area. So I think we have to take this trend and the time to move on with our projects.
So based on these measures, we conducted a feasibility test. So the reason why we did this is because this project has become invalid from the very beginning. So even though we provide land compensation, we need to have a legal ground. So for that matter, we need to make a case by this indicator to the relevant ministry. So if you look at the alternative 1 or option 1, it's the way of using the city development use or expropriate. That's the option 1. So this means that, the second option is the combination one. So we can, it's the combination of returning the land or to provide a cash compensation. So option 3 is about tourism complex 4 and making it as a recreation area. So this indicator should be higher than 1. But if you see, for the option 3, it's below 1. It's 0.89. And for the option 2, the indicator shows 0.95. And for option 1, we have a slightly higher than 1.01. But it requires a lot of work. From And for those landowners who have the license before the land acquisition, we need to provide a required compensation for them to have this PI for option 1. So it's not easy to go for even option 1. And now it's even more difficult to have to bring them together to discuss on the table, to talk about how to raise the PI. So we need to have a common ground for discussion first to get started to resolve this issue. So this brings to the final point of my presentation. So option 1 is the most feasible way at this present. So how to raise that indicator, that's what we should to think about. So for small cities, like commercial facilities, accounts for 3.5% of the entire area. But for special cases, like when there is special discussions with the landowners, that percentage can increase a little bit to 5 to 6 or even to 10%. But for this one, we need to have a valid ground. So we need to discuss about this with the landowners and how to accelerate the functions of the city. And we have like 2.4 kilometers of the road, and the entry area, we have been given 4.7 billion won from the nation. Given this situation, we need to re-promote this program because we have been given a lot of public fund already. So we need to facilitate the conversation, discussion with the landowners and other stakeholders. And I think the most important point for this project is to looking for and seeking for and win-win measures for every stakeholders, for landowners and for the project carriers. So, well, at the worst case, we can return all the land to the landowners, but still, there's a room that we have to think about and discuss the possibility for this project to get started again. So in order to minimize the worst case scenarios and to get re-promoting this project, we should come up with a win-win measures for the landowners. That is the priority for this program to get restarted. So for that matter, I'd like to ask for more cooperation and understanding. In addition, about 20 years ago, our goal was to come up with a high-end resort complexes to invite foreign tourists. That was the original goal 20 years ago. And now we need to revisit if it is still valid. The original goal was still valid. Whether this complex should only be for the foreign visitors and high-end facilities, or we can kind of change this resort to more general, for more general publics. So that's another point that we need to think about. City's functions and area development and the ways to make harmony with every stakeholders. That's another point that we need to think about. And we are trying to come up with a consultative body with the landowners to discuss on this program. So that's very important effort, I think. And from the government perspective, from our perspective, we can think about ways to be part of the government contest project. We can participate in that kind of project competition or contest. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening.
박정호 차장님.
Thank you very much, Director. So we could look back the 2 decades of history through him. The amusement park and some of these other facilities, the approach was a little bit different. Actually, the plan was aiming to facilitate the tourism industry 2 decades ago. And there were some conflicts, and then it came to this kind of ruling so far. The landowners are calling for several measures. Some are just trying to get back to the original status, and some are going forward the further development. One thing particular was that when we are conducting this kind of project, most of those cases, well, actually they are trying to finish the project first, but you were thinking about the building the infrastructure, and you were thinking about the overall big picture, so that was very extraordinary. Are we going back to the original tourism complex, or during the last 2 decades, a lot of things have changed? So for the development of this area and for the benefit of the local residents, maybe we can find some other better solution to develop this area. So there are the combined methods, or there are the expropriation on the land of use method, or the replotting method. So we have to receive the authorization for the preliminary feasibility study. Maybe we can increase the ratio of the business portion, or we can receive the local government support. Those things can be the solution. The understanding, the agreement, and consensus should be achieved. I think that'll be the urgent task. Regarding this, we have 4 panelists here. So since they are the experts in this matter, so let's hear them first. With regard to the presentation today, actually we have the participants on the YouTube, so we can receive some of these questions from the online participants. Let me ask the Professor Kang first. Since you were involved in the authorization and getting the license at the first place, looking back, I'd like to know the FDI investment and the landmark building was going to be established at that time. I would like to also know some of those expectations from the local residents back then. But a lot of things have changed. What things should be emphasized in particular? Looking at the design, there is a road crossing from south to north, so maybe that can be one of the idea. There was a press room in Jeju Island, and based on the FDI, the grand plan for the Yerae Reacreation Housing Complex was announced. $1.8 billion worth of investment was going to be made. Landmark hotels and various facilities were actually included in the blueprint of this complex. the landmark hotel was going to have like 50 stories and 270-meter height. The Jeju Car Hotel, including the lounge, it could make only 25 stories. So the Free City wanted to build the highest hotel at the time. And the Jeju Planning, the Deliberation Committee's authorization had to be made. And many reporters wanted to visit the committee, and those press wanted to visit the site. In this way, a lot of the media were interested in this. And we had to confirm this the plan. But the landscape and viewpoint restrictions were applied, and the helicopter was used to see whether this hotel can abide by the height regulations. In this way, we measured it, and after the measurement on the site, we collected the opinions, and we could have the hearing and the meeting like that. A few days later, the Prime Minister was the chairman of committee to push forward this project. I think, in my opinion, actually the Prime Minister was attending one of these kind of Jeju-forum or other international forum like that, and then on the way back, he could stop by the site, and then he could hear the story of the deliberation, and then he made some like encouraging remarks there, from my recollection. I think it was the first case to draw attention from the central government regarding this kind of tourism and development matter. And the urban planning method would be the appropriate method at this moment. Well, at this moment, we have to push forward in this kind of urban planning way, but the compensation or the reploting method should be used at the same time. If we mix this together, that will be the easiest way to solve this. And there are some problems from the combined methods or the replotting or the exploration method. So we have to find solutions to address these problems. In addition, as long as it is suspended to move forward, things will get worse. So we have to let others know about this fact, and we should try to reduce the time to complete this project. Above all, the authorization and licenses can be invalid soon. So that is why we have to expedite to get the feasibility study authorization. So we have to explain this land circumstances and the project. So in-depth deliberation should be made. Thank you for listening. Thank you very much, Professor Kang, because he's very well aware of all those histories. So he could share all those the moments with us. Well, if it could be finished at that time, it could become the most representative tourism site in Korea. So that's very regrettable. So delivering this project's the aim and goal is very important. But to persuade the landowners or participants, then we have to use several methods at the same time.
So now let's invite CEO Park Myo-jin for as a second discussant. CEO Park has been involved in this program for a long time. So out of the core 7 projects back then, well, how did foreign investors respond and what are their requirements? And what about, what's the possibility to pass through the government preliminary feasibility test? And is there any ways to make use of the mortgage loan to get this project started? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Park Myo-jin from Plus PMC. Well, I have involved in this project since 2003. And I have meeting a lot of foreign investors talking about this project. Back then, this project was received as a clean and very attractive project because the JDC was doing all the challenging work that made it very attractive for foreign investors to be part of this program. And from the perspective of foreign investors, the profit from pre-sailing is very important. But this project had a very clear profit from pre-sailing. So it was very attractive for foreign investors in the beginning. And back then, Jeju was not very famous for foreign investors, to be honest. But still, they had a lot of interest in this project. So we had a high expectation that this project would go smoothly. But now we have these challenges, which is very regrettable. So that was how it all started. The second point that I would like to make is that if this project is to be involved in private sectors or investors, so that was the question, the possibility of having private sectors. So as mentioned frequently, so for private sectors to have interest in this program, this critical matter should be reserved in the beginning, in the first place. And so suppose that private sectors have decided to be part of this program, but then the second problem would be how this program is to be structured, because what they want is to have the return profit. So it should be clear for them to have a return profit. But without them, they would not want to be part of this project. Well, only then they can think about like a mortgage loans, like a PF project or LIT. But without that, it will not be possible. Even the possibility for doing the tourism complex or other possibilities. So coming up with, for example, let's take the example of the LIT. So we have approximately 282 LIT projects. The number changes all the time, but market size is about 53 trillion Korean won. So size is quite okay. But the package structure, 80% of the LIT project is mainly accounts for the offices and others. So to have investors attracted to this program, we need to come up with packages that they want. and provide a clear pictures for them to be attracted to this program. And about the preliminary feasibility study, I have a lot of things to say. But now the Ministry of Finance is very important, and they may think that the PI is higher than 1, and that might be okay, but that's not all. But that's not the end of the story, because the ministry will submit that information to KBI, which has the most number of the economic expert. So to have a productive conversation with KDI, we need to provide a very clear information and data with reasonable ground. And the possible question from them is that there's a pond. It's called Yedang Pond, which used to be a water reservoir. And the project was to transform that water reservoir to the pond, public pond. And in the process, the questions that we got from them was that they asked about the cost in terms of investment cost, but they calculate the investment cost by the unit of 1. So I have written down some information. For example, they were asking the reclamation ways and method and more specific ways for reclamation. And they also asked the very meticulous explanation of the reasons. And when we provide the information of the facility names, they asked, in operating the facilities, how many people will be required, and what's the cost for that labors. So this is the examples of the questions. So they're asking the plans for the human resources. And back then we had a cultural heritages, and they asked the preliminary investigation for the cultural heritages and the relevant investment cost for that heritages. They asked this information as well. And the most discussions back then was about the demand. So for that demand is the objective, and so demand by nature can change all the time. So cost is plan and demand is the objective. So based on this big picture, we analyze. But then they ask the reasonable ground why we calculated that way. That made me very perplexed. So our side and KDI had a very different perspective. They approached this from the economic perspective. So given this, the preliminary feasibility would not be easy. So what I want to say is that having feasibility tests from other stakeholders, like a city development center, might be easier than having it from KDI. So to raise the possibility of passing the feasibility study is to have it with City Development Center. Thank you for listening.
감사합니다.
Thank you very much for sharing your opinion with us. At that time, Jeju was actually not having the reputation as a tourism the spot at that time. So we had to reduce the risk. And things have changed. But to pass this, the private sector's investment is very important at this moment. So the getting back the original investment is the key. And the other thing is the conflicts among the landowners. So the consensus should be made among them. And the other thing is the feasibility study, or FS. So the urban planning will be the most possible way to pass this FS. And the next will be the Pangmyojin. If we pursue the original plan, then, or if we change it, does it still have the original, the intention or the meaning as the recreation housing complex? And to build the win-win the strategy with landowners, what can we do? My name is Professor Go Dong-wan from Gyeonggi University. But I think I have to mention my department because this is the time to emphasize the major, the Tourism Development Department. Well, if we start to bring 20 years old history to discuss now, then it's not easy. It was a long history. It's been 2 decades. But still, the expectation and the aim of the original plan of the Yerae Reacreation Housing Complex remains the same, I believe. Putting aside the old history, next to the Jungmun Tourism Complex, the site is located there, so maybe we can take the urban development method or we can push for the original plan, but either way, we have to take a long-term view so that this is the key area for the development of Jeju Island. So we should emphasize this. So there were opinions already. So putting some more words to their opinions, I think we have to come up with the proper measures to complete this project. The Jungmun Tourism Complex was actually the first which was completed through the Tourism Promotion Act. Actually, it was not having the complex in its Jungmun Tourism Complex name, but there was another story to change it. Rather than the building something, the tourism complex kind of far away from the Jungmun, but maybe since it's next to it, maybe we can connect these two together. So I think still, if the Yerae goes with the urban development, the method, I think there is a feasibility. And you asked me, what kind of win-win measures can we take? Or how can we build them at the first place? Well, essentially, I would like to say this. To be honest with you, well, human beings are selfish. We are greedy, including myself. So we cannot neglect those natures of human beings. We have to take these into consideration. Not everyone can go with the win-win measure. I think it's only our hope that everyone can make the consensus, and they will like compromise their interest. From very one little spot or idea, I think the conflict will start. So we have to take another perspective that we are actually pursuing our own interest. They are local residents and investors and the government. Of course, we need to go for the win-win measures. So we can come up with various measures, but fundamentally, I think this Yerae Recreation Housing Complex is there, and I'm living here. Well, we should change this mind. We should make a kind of coexisting this space for all those parties. We are making a very good section for the foreigners, and they can be landowners like that. And there were some like the voices against those arguments, whether it would be an area or the city. We cannot let only foreigners live there. These foreigners need to live with local residents, the current residents anyway. Well, when we build the new city, we are not only making the high-story, the apartment complexes, there will be several types of facilities and buildings. Eventually, all of us will need to build kind of coexistence spaces. Foreign investors will come and they will invest in this project. Of course, the Koreans can do that too. They can just stay for like 2 months, or then they go back to Seoul and stay there several months. There will be foreigners and the Koreans. So I think this area should go for the direction of the urban development. When we talk about the win-win measures, I think we have to think about the coexistence. And when we discuss about the land substitution, I hand in certain amount of land, and then later I get back certain like amount of land somewhere else, and then I can do my own business like that. Well, I think time flies when I make my remarks. Anyway, it was emphasized before anyway, but when we think about the best solution to push for this project, we have to take a long-term view, and we have to take step-by-step approach. It's difficult to achieve this, but like it was emphasized several times, how can we address these disputes? And how can we raise several issues? If we don't consider these, well, there will be other like the concerns. It's kind of Achilles gun. And the Achilles gun here is the main roads. Maybe we have to reconsider this. If it's the roads, according to the urban development, the plans, then those constructed roads can be substituted once again. Even though it requires certain amount of the expenses, I think it's necessary to finish constructing the roads at the first place. Maybe we can just go back and then take back those lands and then substitute that to the other part's land. Or we can give these landowners with certain amount of money. We don't know when we will fix the overall plan, whether it would be the reploting method or the expropriation method. I think there should be numerous the alternatives to achieve this. I think I have 2 minutes left. Can you share my slide? There is, well, when this project was initiated, actually I was conducting another research. When I was looking at that, was it 2003? The Habit project? I think, well, the concept of the recreation housing complex was not fully established at the time. And at that time, the recreation housing complex was actually a space for the foreigners to stay. And during the process of the development, we could not fully establish the concept of the recreation housing complex. I think that was the beginning of all those history. Introducing the housing complex in the tourism area. Regarding this issue, I made a presentation and I shared this story. It's called the Watercolor Inn and Resort. It's on the Santa Rosa Beach, Florida. And it was the master planned at the 499-acre, the coastal resort community. And they used this term, the resort community, not only for the tourists, but there are some residents living here. So they are trying to provide a resort service, but there are the retail and office area and residential areas. And there were more than like 1,000 the single-family and multi-family homes. So there were several usage of complexes, and actually the hotel had only 60 rooms. Here, as you can see, it's opposite from our original plan. We were thinking about the giant hotel with lots of rooms, but here they have only a small number of rooms in the hotel, and the rest of them were for the residents. Please move to the next slide. Is it this one? I think the slides are mixed. This is the master plan. This is a cul-de-sac method, as you can see. It's a common method used in the United States. And the resort community looks like this. It's not like a place for the rich people to stay for a while. So I think we need to change our mindset. On the right side, that's the hotel. It's actually a residential complex. But it's not only for the regular residents, but the people who want to stay just for a short time. So these people could have certain place here. So maybe when we think about the master plan to pass the feasibility study, you can take these into consideration, I think. The town center, or maybe you can understand that as a community center. So if you think in a kind of like different way, I think there are tons of methods. All these pictures are the most the kind of appropriate pictures for this session, but there are other pictures as well. And I think, well, from the urban planning method, we have to think about this kind of like the tourism investment. Well, my presentation is up. Thank you very much, Professor Ko. And thank you for sharing the alternatives with us. We have to embrace all those local residents' ideas, and while the inclusiveness and co-prosperity of this forum was also embedded in his presentation, I would like to pass my mic to the last panelist. So he was involved in the replanning the complex. The replanning method was used, and then we can go in this way, right? The demand and prospect. I would like to hear that.
Morning, I'm Kang Miran from JPM. In 2005, I was working for Seogwipo City, and this was JDC. Like getting the approval for the changes of the JDC. That was my first assignment back then. Because of the revision of the law, that approval was possible back then. So back then, JDC was really working hard. They visited to the relevant agencies every time to push for this project, but it is really regretful to see that now we are stuck at this point. In the beginning, this amusement park was not was not assigned for the JDC, but the Seogwipo City was first involved for amusement park facilities for this area, because amusement park was accepted as a place for general publics. And that was coming up with the Seogwipo City, and that was one of the 7 advanced projects back then. And as mentioned earlier, there was an amendment of the Special Act, and in a way that all the functions can be part of the amusement park. So in the beginning, the JDC, because the law allowed having the residents there, so in the beginning, JDC brought that idea. And they said that it seemed like it's not right to include that residential complexes. So there was this mixed conversation of having residential complex or not. And back then, making amendment on the relevant laws, it was allowed to have all the facilities in the amusement park, even the residential complex. But now we are at this situation, challenging situation. So we have this system that we can search for the information about the land and real estate. So I looked for the information for this one, but I couldn't find this information. And the only information that I was able to find is that this was registered as a nature reservation area. And because of the court ruling, and this was classified as areas that have not been implemented for a long time. So without any proper procedures, there's only notification that all the relevant procedures are invalid. That was the information that we can find from that system. So I just felt like that all the efforts have come to nothing. So green preservation area by nature, it means that building to rent ratio is 20%. And it should be closer to the road. So at this point, it's almost impossible to have any development. So green reservation area, having only amusement park is possible, and having the tourism complex is only possible, and city development area is only possible in natural green area. So those are only 3 cases that is possible in green preservation area. So we have this famous tourism complex right next to it, and in order to expand our tourism functions to the western and southern, west and south direction, we need to think about the public benefits or public interest. So under the circumstances, Jeju has come up with a possible or relevant regulations and the cases for having permit. So that brings another limitation for having the feasibility in this project. And in terms of recreation, amusement park, it also requires a proper expropriation procedure, which requires different demands from landowners, which appears to be very difficult too. So this could bring another conflicts, I think. So in summary, as a city development project, that could include sale of the land or replatting, but without having the compensation to the landowners, it requires the reduction of house lot. So I think there's a possibility for having a positive conversation with the land owners for these measures. But we still think about the business sense, because this is not the general city development project like others. And we need to think about the ways to develop for high density facilities. So we need to seek for that ways. If we transfer this project to city development project, we need to think about the expropriation measures and 2040 city development program or project. We need to gather and collect the voices of other stakeholders to make it possible. And the third question was about the demand or perspective of the new city development in Seogwipo City. So for this one, I think we should go for like combined development that includes everything, because we have Shinhwa History Park and we have Shinhwa Tourism Resort. And for the balanced development of the 4 different areas in Jeju, and as part of the development plan for west and north area, because these are located in the west and north area, south area, we need to think about ideas, or we should take the lessons from other cases like English City, which has a lot of problems right now because of the reckless development. So that kind of functions can be centralized or focused in this area. And the tourism infrastructure can be located in this area in a way to achieve the balanced development in Jeju. So in conclusion, it can be connected to the English City, and it can connect to the ideas like a compact city to re-promote this project. So that may be one idea that it can get this project restarted. So a lot of foreign investors and investors from Seoul, they say that if the land-related problems are resolved, they have interest in participating or taking part in this project. So if there's a right direction for this one in terms of land, I think there's a chances. And JDC has been very good with the 7 projects. So I think they can focus their capability and capacity in this program so that this can be reserved and this complex can become a beautiful and wonderful Yerae residential resort complex as planned. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. It was a very good talk. Since you are the urban planning expert, for a feasibility study, the land of use should be shifted, and also the urban plan should be reflected to the 2030 the plan, and also the Shinhwa World or the Jungmun Tourism Complex and the Jeju English City. All those things need kind of a hub area, so this Yerae can be used in that way. So we could hear the valuable insights from all our panelists. And I have a question to the Director Park. Well, what's your thoughts after hearing these ideas? Well, it was very good to hear that some of those ideas that we did not think about before. So thank you very much for your thoughts and insights. We have a long way to go. Maybe we could make kind of 2/3 of the whole way, but we should not give up on this and make our strides. As you pointed out, not only for the win-win measure, but we should go for the coexistence measure. I admit that. Fundamental question is that whether it would be used for the tourism complex or the housing. The visitors were like 4.2 million, but in number soared to like 15 million. The increase in the local residents, the population is not 700,000 yet. Previously, it was about 200,000 or something. So, on this island, we need a proper urban area for the residents. And proper housing complex should be established. But so far, a lot of the tourism areas were developed, and that's the truth. So we need some like a resting place. And the local residents had to give their spaces for the favor of tourists. But we need to think about our local residents and embrace them, and we need to give them some resting place. So once again, we have to review this project and we have to find out the coexistence measures with our local residents. We will think about that in depth. We will do our best. Thank you very much. Thank you, Director Park.
오늘 발제와 토론에 대해서 질문이나 또 의견 있으시면 말씀해 주시기 바랍니다.
Is there any opinions or comment from the floor?
네, 우리 이사장님.
Yes. Chairman, among the comments from the Kang Mi-ran, the amusement park was released and only it is used as the natural green area. And there are some restrictions that the area should be less than 10,000 square meter, like that. But actually, we conducted the precision, the structure area. And well, there were some like the separation, the response. Well, I think we can consider that. Well, what's your opinion on that? Do you think it's possible to separate these areas? Please use your mic. Well, it was unprecedented. For the first stage, I think, well, what's the land area? It's about 30,000 평. Well, the land use has not changed. So zoning has not changed yet. So there's no solution to this at this moment because the zoning has not changed. But I think you have to make a consultation with the Jeju Island government. If you complete the project and then the construction is done, and then it's just a land site, and then this area will not be reflected as the overall the land site area, then it can be removed from counting the whole the land site. Is there any case to choose as a completion as the only the land? Yes, the Shinhwa Park is the case. Well, it was authorized unit by unit. Well, the first stage area, well, it's unprecedented, so it's a new part. So please think about that and share your idea with us. Thank you very much, the chairman, and good question. We talked about this issue for about 1 hour and a half. Surrounding the Yerae Reacreation Housing Complex, we could have like in-depth understanding. Rather than amusement park or tourism complex. Anyway, well, there were a lot of voices that we have to turn this into the urban development, the purpose area. We have to embrace the needs from the local residents and also the calls from the tourists. So it should be the kind of like complex combination purpose, the complex. And we can receive some support regarding the roads from the local government. It's not only one the business district. Shinhwa Park or the Jeju English City or the Jungmun Tourism Complex. Well, connecting all these, maybe Yerae can function as a hub. So that was also an option. I hope these ideas can be delivered objectively to all those stakeholders. Well, the landowners will feel really sorry, but well, we have to do our best to make a consensus by delivering our intention with a good willingness. Thank you very much for listening. This is the end of our session.
Thank you for for a very productive discussion. Let's give them a big round of applause. Now we are going to have a brief break, and then from 10:50 we will have another session, U.S.-China competition and Northeast Asia, hosted by East Asia Foundation. Thank you.